Had it not been for the sudden implosion of the Assad regime, it would have been a clear contender for the craziest, least expected news story of the year. On the evening of December the 3rd, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol appeared on TV to announce that he was placing the country under martial law. What followed can be best described as absolute bedlam. As protesters took to the streets, opposition lawmakers raced to the National Assembly, where soldiers fought with ordinary citizens to get inside. One prominent opposition politician was captured on film scaling a fence. In the end, as military helicopters whirred overhead, 190 lawmakers voted unanimously to end martial law. A couple of hours later, President Yoon revoked his decree. And just like that, South Korea's gravest political crisis in decades was over. For most of the outside world, the reaction to the drama swung from initial shock to eventual amusement at how bungling it had all been. Far from a would-be tyrant, President Yoon came across more like a gambler who just bet the house on a pair of threes, only to discover everyone else was playing roulette and that he'd just lost his pants. It would have been laughable were it not all so worrying. Well, in the near 2 weeks since Seoul's brief flirtation with military rule, the laughter has started to ebb away. In its place has come a recognition of just how close one of America's major allies came to a self-inflicted catastrophe. Now, the first thing to note is that it appears Yoon and his government had apparently been planning the coup for some time. According to liberal newspaper Hankyoreh, government documents obtained by a member of the opposition Democratic Party show that Yoon's defense minister had begun investigating in autumn whether the president could veto a request by the National Assembly to lift martial law. Now, the idea that the government might have researched the legality of martial law before declaring it maybe isn't that odd. What is odd is the way they initially wanted to justify it. On Monday the 9th, lawmaker Patrick Byom-kai of the Democratic Party claimed that a military whistleblower had informed him that then-Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, who has since been arrested, had tried to engineer a border skirmish with North Korea as a pretext for imposing martial law. Here's how Hankyoreh reported it. There are mounting suspicions that former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun intended to justify the declaration of martial law or a state of united defense by instigating a military conflict with North Korea by ordering strikes on the sites from which the North was launching trash-filled balloons. The quote ends. So, if true, that would mean that South Korea's government seriously toyed with starting a war just to save its leader from sagging approval ratings. A war that, had it escalated, the United States would have been treaty-bound to get involved with. Now, to be clear, this is just an allegation at this stage, one based on the reports of an anonymous whistleblower. But other reports on Seoul's night of chaos have come from people who participated in the coup attempt. Military men and intelligence chiefs who have testified before lawmakers about what happened. And their combined testimony points to a number of extremely close calls for South Korean democracy. The closest of these was one that played out on social media in real time. The army's attempt to block lawmakers from entering the National Assembly to vote on martial law. On Tuesday, the chief of the Army Special Warfare Command, Lieutenant General Kwak Jong-kyung, appeared before a parliamentary defense committee. Here's how he reported a conversation with President Yoon about the assembly preparing to override Yoon's decree. To quote, he said, "The quorum didn't appear to be met yet, so I should break down the doors and go in and drag out the people inside." End quote. Yonhap News Agency explains that the quorum on such a vote was a bare minimum of 150 lawmakers out of 300 present. In the end, 190 managed to get inside to vote against the decree, although the general admitted he'd considered ordering his soldiers to storm the building while firing blanks to prevent that from happening. These weren't the only sinister orders given that night. According to First Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service, Hong Jang-wong, Yoon personally called him, demanding he arrest multiple opposition lawmakers, 2 former Supreme Court judges, and at least 1 prominent media personality known to be critical of the government. In his report, Hong said he ignored the order and privately thought the president must have gone, quote, insane. Perhaps equally mad was what took place at the National Election Commission, the body that oversees, as the name suggests, Korea's elections. There, Blue Roof Politics reports that 300 troops from Defense Counterintelligence Command stormed the building and detained officials. The reason? They were looking for evidence of electoral fraud. Now, if you're an American, you may not be aware that there's another major democracy out there with its own obsession over stolen elections. Ever since the opposition Democratic Party won a landslide majority in the National Assembly in April, the Yoon administration has been loudly insisting that the vote was rigged. Well, the military occupation of the National Election Commission was apparently intended to prove it. The speculation is that Yoon assumed that he'd find a smoking gun, and that this revelation would delegitimize any vote by the National Assembly to cancel martial law. Nor was the NEC the only place the military was directed to occupy. In General Kwok's testimony, as reported by Yonhap, the general said he'd been given orders to also take over the headquarters of the Democratic Party and the offices of liberal-leaning polling company Flower Research. JTBC Television subsequently carried an interview with an anonymous Special Forces commander who claimed there was likewise a plan for troops stationed in the provinces to enter Seoul the following day and secure the city center. Beyond that, there are wild rumors that things could have gone further. Blue Roof Politics has claimed on X that there was a plan for soldiers wearing fake North Korean military gear to assassinate key opposition leaders. While that seems a little bit far-fetched, it is not beyond the realms of possibility. After all, the only reason the military failed to take over the National Assembly was because no one involved in the coup had thought to inform the Air Force, which subsequently held up the troop-carrying helicopters for 40 consequential minutes. Really though, it wasn't just bumbling incompetence that stopped Yoon's attempted coup from working, nor was it merely the lawmakers and protesters who battled soldiers for control of the National Assembly. No, what's clear today is that South Korea sidestepped catastrophe largely due to the bravery of a handful of regular folk, a few ordinary people who did the decent thing when it mattered most. By this, we mean the soldiers who refused to follow orders they knew were illegal, or the 100 troops who quietly abandoned their units rather than follow their officers into the abyss. We mean, too, the higher-ups who ignored or slow-walked orders from the defense minister, such as the NIS director who disregarded Yoon's demand that he arrest members of the opposition. Because, make no mistake, plenty of people did go along with this insane plan. Just this week, the chiefs of the National and Seoul police forces were arrested for their role in the coup. Others in the army or government ministries are known to have stood by despite their internal misgivings. Had more people been willing to put their scruples aside, it is possible that South Korea could have been plunged into an even greater crisis. Now, thankfully, that didn't happen, but it's worth acknowledging just how close we came this month to witnessing a key pillar of the Western alliance in Asia crumbling. And all for the vanity of a single man who put his own power and prestige above that of his entire nation.